Welcome back, students who are taking Math for Business and Finance and Math Applications, and we're continuing on with the Chapter 13 word problems, the odd-numbered problems, and we left off with problem number, let's see here, 23 in the last video. So, Joe Martin's graduation from college. Joe's uncle promised him a gift of $12,000 in cash, or $900 every quarter for the next 4 years after graduation. If money could be invested at 8% compounded quarterly, which offer is better for Joe? Okay, so this is a choice of either the $12,000 in cash or the $900, all right, compounded quarterly. So the payment is going to be $900, and over the next 4 years, so if that's compounded quarterly, that's 4 times a year for 4 years, that's 16 periods. And the 8% interest is 8 divided by 2. I'm sorry, divided by 4 is 2% quarterly, right? So our rate is 2%, our number of periods is 16. Now, you can go about doing this one of two different ways. We could look at it from the perspective of, okay, well, if I, how much is it as an ordinary annuity? So jump up to the table here, and I'm looking at 2% here for 16 periods, and that gives me a factor of 18.6392. So I take the 18.6392 and multiply that by the $900, and I end up with $16,775.28, okay, as a future value. So then what you can do is you need to go to table 12.3, table 12.3, which is the present value of $1 at the end of a period, okay? And we find the factor on that table, right? And that factor would be 0.7284, okay? And multiply it by that factor, and we end up with $12,219.11, okay? And of course, that's greater than the 12,000, all right? So you would want to choose the $900 annuity, okay? Now, the other way of going about this is that we can look at the present value of an annuity, okay? And if we did it that way, we look at the 2% for 16 periods, and that gives us a factor of 13.5777. So we take the 13.5777 and multiply that by 900, and that will give us the same amount, 219.93. And remember, the difference of this 93 versus this 11 is due to rounding effect. But the fact of the matter is that the 12,219 is still greater than the $12,000. So you would want to choose the $900 annuity. Okay. So if in looking at this, again, there's two different ways of doing this. One, we could have just taken the present value of the annuity because we want to compare it to $12,000 to today. So that's why we used the present value of an annuity table. And we found the factor 13.5777. Okay, or we could have done it the opposite way and said, okay, well, how much is that $900 annuity, or as an ordinary annuity, going to be worth, 4 years from now? Okay, and then take that lump sum and treat it as, as a present value of a lump sum, and that would give us, basically the same amount. So for this problem, there's two different ways of going about it, and both end up being right. Okay, if you have any questions about that, feel free to, watch the video again, pause, rewind, or telephone and speak with an instructor. Okay, because it is, it's just two different ways of thinking. Okay. Remember, in math, there's oftentimes more than one way to find the answer. It all depends upon how you look at it. Okay, so 13-25. A local Dunkin' Donut franchise must buy a new piece of equipment in 5 years that will cost $88,000. So in 5 years, that will cost $88,000. The company is setting up, so that's like a future value, okay? The company is setting up a sinking fund to finance the purchase. What will be the quarterly deposit? Okay. If the fund earns 8% interest, so that's my rate. And since it's quarterly, we take our 5 years, our 5 periods, and we multiply it by 4, which means we're looking at 20 periods. And 8% interest divided by 4 means 2% compounded quarterly. And we go up to our sinking fund table, and we look up the 2% interest for 20 periods, and we get a factor of 0.0412. 0.0412, and we're going to multiply that by the $88,000, and that means we would have to make a quarterly payment of $3,625.60 each quarter in order to have the $88,000 in the future, 5 years from now. Okay, so again, this here is a sinking fund, and generally these problems will tell you that to use the sinking fund table. But remember, a sinking fund is nothing more than the reciprocal of, the opposite of the ordinary annuity table. Okay, so you can use the ordinary annuity table, but it's just a lot more math when it's just easier to use that sinking fund table. Okay, and remember, a sinking fund is nothing more than saying, hey, I want this amount in the future, and this is how much I need to put in, today or an ongoing basis. And that's why it's called sinking, because I'm going to sink my money into it and let it build and build and build, so that I'm not paying a full $88,000. I'm actually end up paying less because I'm getting the interest on the money over time. Right? So it's just a smarter way to purchase something in the future. To give you an idea, maybe as a quick example, let's say you wanted to buy a car, and you're making these payments on this car, and wouldn't it be nice, that now you've paid off this car, and now you've got these monthly payments that you no longer have to make. Okay, well, if you wanted, let's say you wanted to move up from, I don't know, say a Honda to a Cadillac. Okay, just making something up. Everybody immediately goes to a lease payment. Well, why go to a lease payment when if you can sit there and say, okay, through a sinking fund, if I continue to make this amount of payments at this amount of interest, I'll let the interest build on the interest, and that'll help fund that, that Cadillac down the road. Okay, but again, most people will spend the money because they don't have to make the payments anymore, instead of banking it away and then buying that car outright. And you'd have a nicer car, and it would last you 10, 15 years without having to make a payment. So that's a whole nother story. So it's just to give you an idea of what a sinking fund is to say, oh, I need 40,000, say 4 or 5 years from now, how much do I need to put in? and compounding it over a specific period of time at an interest rate. How much do I need to put in today? And generally, it's, you'll find that if you're making those monthly payments, you continue to make those monthly payments and you'd own the car instead of having to lease it and not own it. Okay, so with that said, I will see you in the next video, and we only have 2 more problems left.